Ladies and gentlemen, Ad Club Board Chair, Nielsen's SVP, Head of Digital Sales, Rick Song.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you. Thank you, thank you. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for coming out for lunch with us. The Ad Club and the International Andy Awards are thrilled to be back live and streaming. And we're committed to keeping the ad community connected and informed wherever you are by providing hybrid content really for the foreseeable future. And one of the beauties of this environment is that we have the ability to reach people all around the country, really all around the world. So we've got folks dialing in from everywhere. In our Conversation With series today, we're bringing interviews with thought leaders in our membership and our board of directors to talk about the most pressing topics of the day and also get a glimpse into their personal lives so you get a chance to know them as well. Today, in today's third episode of Conversations With, I'm pleased and thrilled to have past chair and Ad Club board member Carl Fremont, CEO of Quigley. Big round of applause for Carl. Before we get started, I want to make sure and encourage you all, if you're not a member, to please go to advertisingclub.org and sign up. Our mission as an organization is to educate, celebrate, and empower our ad community. And now in a hybrid environment. And we've got some other important programming coming up. We've got Innovate New York discussion on Connected TV with our member company Infilion on April 7th. And then our next Conversation With series is with Executive Creative Director Walter Geer from VMLY&R. That'll be on April 20th. So like I said, sign up for these events at advertisingclub.org. And feel free to share what you see and hear today on social at Ad Club New York. Of course, these programs are not made possible without the support of our sponsors. Thank you to Devika Baldanchani from Ogilvy for hosting us today and for the next few sessions. And to GSTV, our presenting sponsor for the remaining Conversation With series. I want to take a minute to introduce Terry Lavin, RVP of Client Partnerships. Terry, come up and say hello.
Thanks, Rick. Thank you all. Welcome. GSTV is delighted to be sponsoring this. I think it's really important, not only the content, but just the gathering itself. It's great to also have legends like Carl here and Rick, two men I've known since I used to get insertion orders written in ink pen and faxed. So it's been quite a long time. Fun fact, as you look at the gas prices increasing, we're actually seeing more people go to the gas stations now, throwing in $15, $20. So that's pretty standard for us. And if you're not familiar with us, we have a great video. And if you're not familiar, if you live in New Jersey, GSTV, National Video Network, in about 28,000 stations, servicing over 100 million people as they habitually fuel up weekly and bi-weekly. So a little something about what we're doing right now. Here a little video.
We are going on a road trip. Let's roll!
Visit discounttire.com and the Treadwell Tire Guide will find the perfect tire for you.
Did you know kids often laugh up to 300 times a day?
Get holidaying with Dunkin'.
You were born to be an absolute star.
Now that's rare.
Amazing. Thank you, Terry. And thank you, Scott Pawlowski and Steve Oakes, also from the GSTV. And thank you for all the GSTV folks joining us today. And with that, please help me welcome Carl Fremont to the stage. Hello, sir.
Hey, it's great to see you and everybody, both live and virtual.
We're appropriately socially distanced.
Yes.
So that's good.
But I did give you a hug before.
That's true. That was, yeah.
I had to do that.
Yeah.
I hadn't seen you
obligatory
in a while.
hug after years of
Yes,
separation.
absolutely.
So, I think we should start off, Carl. You're a legend and icon, mentor to many in this industry. Tell everyone a little bit about your journey, to CEO
Sure.
Quigley.
And it's interesting reflecting back because last year, September, was my 40th year in this industry.
Wow.
And hard to believe. I can't believe it myself. I don't want to admit the years. But I started at Ted Bates, and the industry was very different then. It was sort of coming off of the Mad Men era, although I didn't start during that time. But early on, I realized a few things. One, that marketing needed to be about driving performance, driving sales, and that marketing needed to be accountable. And back then, 40 years ago, we were not measuring the way we are today. We didn't put as much emphasis on it. And also, I started thinking that I was going to get on the creative side. And as you know, I've been in media really all of my career. And I realized early on that data and insights gathered from data are the ways in which we can tell stories. And for me, as somebody who wanted to be on the creative side and tell stories, using data and insights became my instruments to paint a story and to tell a story. So I followed that path, and I went from early on in Ted Bates to Wonderman. It was called something different then, and really got bitten by the notion of direct marketing. We didn't call it performance then, we called it direct marketing. And it was all about getting results and improving performance. I'm like, how great is that all the efforts and work that we do, we can actually see how things are performing. And I followed that sentiment and that throughout my whole career path, about always understanding the return on investments that we're producing from the work we're doing. And combining that with the notion of creativity from data and insights to build stories is really how I've guided my career ever since.
Fascinating that early on, because using data to tell stories is so in vogue now, but that was something that was
no one talked about it then.
Early in your career, very
No one
impressive.
talked about it. It became my instruments to tell the story, which was data.
So having said that, give us give us some insight on your perspective on the current state of both from a consumer consumption perspective, but also from an overall kind of marketplace perspective, especially given the last 2 years when things have been kind of all over the place.
But as you know, I mean, the changes that we're living through today in consumer behavior and technology and how it's really advancing the way in which consumers and brands connect, that's not new. It was certainly advanced during COVID, but those changes were happening before. You know, in terms of consumers wanting more choices, looking at entertainment and information on multiple screens, whenever, 24/7, whenever, wherever they want, shopping whenever they want. Those were happening before. It was hastened and accelerated because of COVID. Mm-hmm. So I'm thrilled about that part because the evolution was taking a little bit longer. And now there are so many choices and so many opportunities. I've been saying this for 40 years, but I believe we're in the best time in the industry because of all of the advances in technology, access to data, how we really derive insights from all that data. We're really at the best time, but it's also very complex. Mm-hmm. So as the industry has become more digital, more advanced using technology, more access to data, it's also becoming more complex. And many of you out there, many of you that are watching virtually, are helping in that regard in terms of simplifying some of the complexity, but it's still very complex industry.
And then how does Quigley kind of fit into that?
Yeah, great, thank you. And you know, I left large holding companies 3 years ago after spending basically more than half of my career in that way. And Quigley is an independent agency. We do creative and media and user experience, digital web design, everything together. And I like that because we can be very fast and very nimble. We were founded 20 years ago by Gerald Bagg and Renee Hill Young. We're a woman certified owned company. And that opportunity to work with both large and mid-sized brands and clients to bring all of that consumer experience together to acquire customers, to help convert them, to build long-lasting, valuable relationships using CRM, connecting all the way through that customer journey is what we do, what we've been doing, and we always have done. And it really connects back to my history, my legacy in performance marketing. But the one thing that is different and unique is that we believe that strong performance is aided and led by brands, by strong brands. And I know we'll talk a little bit further about that.
Well, no, that's a good segue. I mean, I think also from a career journey perspective, this is a great inflection point, right? Given what you've described, your journey was to get here, to work for an agency like Quigley. To that point, you do speak about brand and demand, right? So outcomes is kind of the hot buzzword of the industry, right? For the last year, couple of years or so, or increasingly over the last couple of years. Talk about what you mean by brand and demand, coming from an agency that's focused on performance.
Sure. And it's a great question because we are so focused on outcomes and business performance. But we believe and we all know that in order to drive somebody to consider a brand, purchase the brand, and build that long-term relationship, valuable relationship, it's from brands that we're all people and consumers, associate with and have a strong connection to, have a strong association that brand's for me. At some point in time, if you're working in doing performance marketing and looking to acquire new customers, you're gonna hit a wall. And if you don't focus on the brand and building that brand's image and building its association, you're not gonna drive the performance at scale downstream unless you have a strong brand. So we believe that you need to have the brand's, what it stands for, its image and association, and make sure that it's pulled all the way through at every part of the consumer journey, at every touch point. And that doesn't routinely happen.
Well, to accentuate that point, Quigley recently worked with Shell on a charitable program called The Giving Pump, supporting local children's organizations. What were the objectives of the Giving Pump campaign, and how did it kind of balance brand as well as drive usage?
Yeah, it's great, and love the campaign because it gave back. And as just what I said, that in order to drive someone to take an action, you have to associate with the brand. And there are many ways to associate. Is the brand doing good in the community, doing good for the community? Do I espouse to what the brand believes in? Does that image of that brand, does it mean something to me? And Shell very much is focused on giving back to the community. So the campaign called Giving Pump was focused on a handful of cities at first in the United States where you went to a separate pump, and I'll show it in a minute, and if you filled up at that pump, Shell gave some of that money, some of that revenue to local charities to help in schools. And it was a great program. It drove over $1.5 million of donations, and it's going to be further expanded. But we leveraged gas station TV for it because it was at the right place at the right time. And so let's show what that pump looked like, the image. So this was, if you pulled up to a pump that looked like this, the Giving Pump, then everything that when you filled up, a certain percentage went to local charities to help children, to help kids at school. And then on the gas station television in the center, we ran a video. Let's play the video.
This local Shell station is giving back to kids in our community, and it's easy for you to join us. Just fill up at the specially marked Shell Giving Pump, and a portion of your purchase will be donated to a local children's charity. It costs nothing extra, but it can mean everything.
So you can see that combining both a brand's purpose, something purposeful from Shell, drove people to take action because it represented something meaningful for consumers. And that's what we really need to be thinking about is how do we take those brand essence, the brand values, and drive it all the way through to create action from consumers.
Very, very cool campaign.
Yeah.
So on that note, what are 3 things marketers should be thinking about when they're thinking about brand and demand?
Yeah, and there are many, but for me, it is what I said about what is that brand's image, what is its brand's purpose, and then how do you pull that message all the way through to every touch point. And that is missing today, right? It's all siloed. You might have a brand campaign that's building its awareness and image, but then when you do anything that takes an action, acquiring, becoming a new customer, and then anything further in that relationship doesn't really bring that brand all the way through, that brand's image and essence. So number 1, make sure that the brand message, its image, is carried through consistently at every touch point. I wish I could tell you that there was one magic bullet to determine what is the right balance between investing in the brand and investing in more downstream, action-oriented, but there isn't. So the second thing is you need to really test and learn. And every brand is different. So the balance between investing in the brand and building the brand's image and what impact that has downstream, that needs to be tested along with different messaging. And then the third part is embrace technology, embrace change. I mean, we couldn't have done the campaign with Shell without gas station TV because that was a new technology. And so embrace technology and embrace data.
Just as a reminder, we're going to take live questions towards the end of the session, and for those dialing in, feel free to type them into the chat. We're going to capture them and share them with Carl live. Having said that, you were early as a digital marketer, on the agency side, very early, right? Predating many in the industry today. Let's talk about social, right? You've been around all the digital channels for many years and probably an early adopter for social. What is the role of social when you think about kind of the philosophy of brand and demand?
Well, it's a good question. It is part of the overall mix. Social, obviously, with all channels. Social is much closer to a point of purchase. It still means that the brand essence needs to come through social channels. I do love the fact that social channels, social marketing is becoming more shoppable. And again, that's embracing new technology and data. I think that's great, but we'll fail if we're just focusing on that shopping experience and not bringing that brand through. So just as I said before, it's creating that right balance, but the idea that you can now shop within the ads, see a brand video, and take action is a great thing because you're closer to that actual point of purchase. It's in your hands. So we believe that there's still a large area of opportunity for it. It's evolving, and we need to embrace the opportunities that social has to both combine the brand's image as well as increase the shopping experience.
So, I mean, your client base is heavy, on the consumer packaged goods side. So is shoppable video a thing that you're testing in the agency?
Yes, and we work with a number of DTC, even
and DTC, of course,
in packaged goods. So, absolutely. I mean, shoppable ads. I myself. I mean, during COVID, and how many of you bought? Come on, I know you have. You bought. See, I know. You bought off of social ads. Like you like the wardrobe? I bought it off of social.
I bought
my socks.
My first TikTok products about 2 weeks ago.
Really?
Yes, first time.
But
I bought Meissen knife and pan.
But you were buying on other social media.
Yes, no, I have Instagram and Facebook. Yeah, I've been doing that for a while. Yeah.
Right, and so that ability to bring it closer to that point of purchase is great, where we can do it. But it still is an environment that we need to test. We need to understand the right balance between brand and action.
Well, having said that, and because you're essentially a performance marketing expert and have worked on many different channels throughout the years. What's different about the test and learn approach today? Like, how has it changed or how has it evolved?
I wish we were doing more test and learn. It has always been in existence, and from my early days at Wonderman, really, and that was the place to learn direct marketing and testing and learning. We did a lot more, and it was a lot more organized and structured than I think we do today. I think we need to do more of it. Some of the real pioneers of it back in the day, and I'm going to really show my age here, like Time Life was great at it, or Reader's Digest. All of those large direct marketers perfected the art of testing and learning. So many different variables. As a matter of fact, Reader's Digest used to have a war room as big as the room we're in today, with everything they tested around the room and the performance. I wish we were doing more of that today and encourage everybody to do it. But interestingly, I can tell a little story. This is not new, as you said. Over 100 years ago, I read this article that the founders of Macy's, which is Isidore and Nathan Strauss, talked about 100 years ago, and I read the article about the results from Christmas period at Macy's in 112 years ago. And Nathan was asking Isidore, so how were sales? And what can we learn from them? He said, well, I tested about a dozen different newspapers in New York. And Nathan said to Isidore, well, how do you know which ones worked? And he said, well, I tested it, and we had each newspaper at a certain day, a certain time, and I measured sales. And that was 110 years ago. Actually, they wrote that together. I read it because Isidore was on the Titanic, and that was 112 years ago, and they were having that discussion on the Titanic, back and forth, letters to each other. April 15th, 1912 is when the Titanic went down. So that's not new. We've always been in that mindset of trying to test and trying to learn, and I wish that we were doing even more rigor around it, because that's how you advance performance.
So as much as things change, they stay the same to some degree?
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, well said. So let's switch gears for a second, because we also want to get to kind of know you a little bit better as a leader and a mentor to many, as I mentioned in the opening. You and I have talked about mentorship. You've been a mentor to me for many years. I know it's an important...
And you are as well. It's important to you.
For sure, for sure. So talk a little bit about your thoughts about mentorship and the role it's played in your career journey.
Well, honestly, I didn't really have great mentors. And I decided to give back. And anyone who does want mentorship, I always say yes at whatever stage they are in their career, because I do think it's important to give back. And I honestly don't think much about it. It's just what I do, because I do believe people who've been in the industry for a while do need to give back and do need to provide mentorship to young people. But for me, it's young people or anyone needs to take a hold of their career. So even though I had people I admired, that I looked up to, there wasn't any one person I could say that was my mentor, which is why I decided I needed to give back. And I would encourage anyone in the community to do it.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of mentorship. I think both inside and outside your company, especially having external perspectives.
Absolutely.
And then I also think as a mentee, it's not just you sit there and listening is an important part of it for both, but I think it's also the mentee should have some structure around the things they want to get out of the relationship, and vice versa.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I think it's, I forgot who said that everyone should have their own kind of board of directors, right, that they can go to that may have different expertise,
absolutely,
different levels of experience, different levels of different views. I think that's super important. So having said that, since you've been a mentor to many, what advice would you give to folks kind of early in their careers right now, given all the dynamics we've discussed today?
Yeah, the same advice I gave myself 40 years ago, which is be a sponge and really absorb everything. The industry is complex, so read a lot. You know, someone starting out today, because everything is digital, has so much more opportunity than I did in an analog world to learn. And you need to take ownership of that career. Don't sit back and lean back and expect wherever you're working to do all of that for you. It needs to be a partnership. Wherever you're working, you need to both come together. Don't rely only on your company to do so.
Yeah.
And what I usually tell even my own daughter, who you know and who's in the industry, who I didn't push into the industry, decided to do it on her own, is every year, and I tell not only her but others, put your learning roadmap together. Don't wait for others. But what are the things that you feel you want to learn, both broader, strategic, and smaller tactical things? I myself, even after 40 years, have my own learning agenda and my own roadmap because it's evolving so much every solitary day. So anybody who is starting out, put together that roadmap, find mentor or mentees to review that with, and take ownership of it. Make sure you are learning and progressing, and when you do, move on to the next phase, which is exactly the advice I've given my daughter.
That's going to be one of the agenda topics for us on how to mentor our own daughters, because they don't want to hear from
and you
the toughest audience I've had trouble mentoring. But
I know you're in the same boat.
Yeah, but to balance that, right? Because mentorship never ends, right? That's kind of advice for those early in their career. What about people that are more established in their careers and are looking for mentorship or looking for kind of advice on how to guide their careers?
Yeah, and someone maybe at the mid-level, which I do as well. It is taking stock, and I always say it's not about where you work, it's not about the place you work, it's about what's your opportunity to learn and advance. You know, and that's been, I did not make a decision that I was going to have really all my career on an agency side. But what I did say is that I wanted to make sure that wherever I was, I had opportunities to learn and to advance and to move things forward and set my own agenda. So anybody who is in sort of a mid-career part, take stock of your career. What have you learned? Where are you? What do you still want to learn? And how do you, both where you are working, but also on your own, build that further learning and advancement?
Yeah, I think the sponge metaphor really applies throughout your career. You know, I absolutely believe the learning never ends, and you know, especially in today's environment, you know, where that things are changing so rapidly and the marketplace is so dynamic.
I literally, and this is a little old school, but I have a separate book where I write, old school, even though I've been in digital for most of my career, I write the things that I need to learn, I need to understand. And I fill it up all the time because it's always evolving, always changing.
Having said that, we have some questions coming in through the chat, and if anyone, I think Stephanie's going to have a microphone to pass around for anyone who has live questions, just raise your hand. But to that point that you just made, Carl, what kind of technologies are your clients leaning into to kind of enhance their marketing efforts?
Yeah, I mean, and as we talked about, the notion of shoppable ads is a big part because we can now move that closer together. You know, the point of sale, the point of purchase. So I'm excited about how that's moving forward. I think advancements in just the ad serving industry and cleaning that up is an important part as well. I think what you need to do on the technology side is what is your objectives? What are you looking to do? Like in the case of performance marketing. And then what I do is I make a list of all of the technology opportunities that are out there, and I keep growing that list and adding to it, and then one by one learn. And I'm always open to anybody in this audience, always approachable, as you all know, to show me what you're doing. And we need to figure out how it fits in to the big and large and evolving ecosystem.
I will vouch for the fact that you have to be one of the most accessible executives in this industry in my 3 decades.
And I'm going to get a million calls, but that's okay.
I think we have a question from the audience.
Hey there, Zevi Tillis from Adomni. My question is, what media channel do you feel is the most effective for branding? And I noticed you use digital out of home. Is there any channel that you think is essential that can't be missed?
It's a great question. And from a branding side, building that brand's image, building its awareness association, I still believe that video using sight, sound, and motion is the best to do it because it can connote emotion, it connotes the benefits, and it's human. It has a human connection to it, video. So I'm also very excited about all the further advancements that we do have in video today in so many different screens. The challenge is, because of those big opportunities, or the plethora of opportunities, where do you put your investment? And what we're all struggling with today, which, Rick, you're very aware of, is what's the currency? How we are measuring it, and how, because that currency is telling us how we allocate dollars or investments across, how we measure it. And we're in a state of change in that area as well, which is good. There's some great foundations we have in the area of measurement, but there's also changes that are happening. That said, as I mentioned before, I think it's really important that the brand's message, its image, gets pulled all the way through so that you are representing what that brand really stands for at every solitary touch point. And I don't see that happening much today. You'll have a TV ad or a video ad, let's say, and then when you look at an acquisition ad, it doesn't necessarily carry that same brand's image and awareness. So I have to make that mental connection. And we shouldn't have to do that. We should be bringing that all the way through at every touch point.
I think we have another question from the audience from former Ad Club chair and fellow board member Lee Nadler.
There you go. Proud to be here and great to see this happening back in person and virtually as well. Love the thought about the Titanic. So it stirred a thought, and I know you're a great storyteller, so I wonder if you can muster up a story from your past of something that you just thought was going to work and didn't, or if you want to take the positive spin, something that you were like, maybe, and it just blew up from amazing positive results. And we could put on the screen maybe #MarketingTitanic.
No. Well, unfortunately, great question, Lee, and great to see you. Unfortunately, there's more graveyards than there are, parks. I don't know what's the opposite of a graveyard, but there are many more failures. But the good thing is, and this is a lesson I've learned, is that you have to fail up. You have to take the risks. And unfortunately, not every brand does, and we're living in a period of time for many years where it's all everybody wants everything right away, and there's less patience to test and learn. And I believe we need to again do more of that. What we've done, and where I think successful brands have been, is they do take a certain amount of their investment and they use it to learn every year and keep learning, and that is almost discounted from their ROI. And I encourage every brand to do that every year. Like, what is your learning agenda? And unfortunately, tying back to the younger people who are just starting out, we're not teaching that today. We're teaching immediate, fast return. What's it doing? I got to optimize tomorrow. And we got to take that moment to step back, optimize in real time, take that moment to step back and figure out, what do we need to learn? And what do we need to learn about consumer behavior? How do we create the right messages, the right connections to get them to take a response? What does that mean? So I would encourage everybody who's listening that set aside a certain amount of your every year of your marketing investment to test and learn and applaud failure. Applaud. I mean, I don't know why, and thank you, Lee. To hashtag Titanic should be a positive, not a negative. We should be celebrating failures because we learned from them. I'm not saying everybody should get on the Titanic. So that's not the. That's
maybe
not
a different
the point.
hashtag.
Yeah, maybe a different. Well, think of a different
different name. Having said that, I'm going to take a question from the chat. I'm going to paraphrase a little bit because I think it's a good one. Also because you took the CEO role not too far after we kind of went into this environment, right? So you've had to build a culture. You've had to inspire and spark creativity and innovation. How was that challenge, and what are some of the things you can share that you've done? And also, you're kind of bi-coastal, right? What are some of the things you've done to kind of like keep the culture of the agency going?
And keep me going.
And keep you going.
Because 6 months in, the world turned around.
Yeah.
And I said, like many, that it's only 3 weeks. It's just a cold. And so I had to adjust. And I think for me and for everyone else, the one big lesson learned was flexibility. You need to adjust and you need to think through, okay, if we're not having live meetings, how are we adjusting in real time? How do we make connections? I still, even today, where I used to do live, every time we have a new employee and it's announced, I reach out to every new employee. I reach out to everybody has a promotion. I make it always accessible. And we have every other month company meetings where we have inspiring speakers from outside the company. And thank you, anyone listening who has done that, and certainly open to anyone else being part of that series. But open yourself up, be flexible, connect to people no matter what. Even though it's more difficult, do so. And even when I do go out to the other coast, I make time individually to meet with people.
Yeah, and for those of you who don't know, Carl has legions of people that he's led over the years that follow. We need a name like Carlites or Carligans or something. Like that'll be a hashtag we just created. I think there's another question from the audience.
Hi there, Brennan Porter from Stillwell Partners. As a leader who's always looking to learn, what's the last subject that you studied, and what means did you go about to learn that?
Well, it's a good question. I'm really connecting to what purposeful means. And we showed Shell as an example. And it's certainly something that especially younger people, younger generations are connecting more with brands that have a purpose. What does that really mean, and how to connect it and how to tie to it and associate with it? So I'm personally very interested in understanding more about what that is. How do we learn more about what are those connection points, and what does it mean to truly be a purposeful brand?
Any other questions from the audience? So in our last remaining moments, I think I wouldn't be doing my job as board chair if I didn't talk about, because you've also been a long-standing member of the Ad Club as well as former chair and board member, longtime board member. Give us kind of your thoughts on your experience working with the Ad Club, kind of why you've chose to participate and engage so much over the years.
Absolutely, and there is one name that you and I and Lee and others in the room know that stand out, and that's Gina Grillo.
Yeah.
Because Gina has been the force behind the Ad Club. Her great enthusiasm and passion is incredibly contagious. And I would not have been really as involved if not for her. But going back to the notion of learning and giving back, for me, the Ad Club has represented that. Yeah. And what we say about educate and celebrate and empower is really what the Ad Club stands for. The ability, anybody listening who's not a member, completely encourage it, because it is a chance to connect to your community, to learn. And we have evolved in the 125 years, even before the Titanic, we have evolved every year, even though some of the marketing principles have stayed the same and advertising has stayed the same. We all know much has changed. And the ad club continues to evolve with every leader, including yourself, Lee. It continues to evolve. So I encourage everyone who's not a member to do so. It's an ability to connect. And we're also very dedicated to diversity and equity and inclusion. And we have great programs around it, like our fellowship program. So really encourage. It has meant a great deal for me and a highlight of my career being part of the ad club and having led it.
Yeah, well said. Gina Grillo, for those of you who don't know, is our president and CEO, and she's really been the heart and soul of the organization for almost 2 decades.
More
than that. I mean,
hi, Gina.
Hi, Gina.
She's out there listening.
I get over two decades as part of the organization, and and I think we've learned so much in this environment in bringing programming and connecting our membership in a hybrid environment, which we're going to continue to do. That we're committed to doing that, and also I think to your point on community, we're connecting with an organization called Prep for Prep. That is Nancy Reyes, who's a former board member. CEO of Chiat Day New York. She actually came out of this organization that helps kind of underserved communities, learn about different industries and advertising. That's how she learned about advertising. Got her to Harvard, and then kind of supported her throughout her journey. And those are the kinds of things we're doing. Community is an important pillar for us. So, for whatever reason you want to get involved, please join.
Please do so.
All right. Having said that, I think we're just about time.
That went fast.
That was 45 minutes.
That went very fast. Thank you, Rick.
Thank you, Carl. Thank you for coming, everyone. Please give
Yes,
Carl a big round of applause.
Thank you all. Thank you all.